From podcasts to TikTok and Instagram, Republicans ruled the social media landscape this past election cycle. Now, Democrats are trying to fight back. More than 20 Senate Democrats posted this same video targeting the president.
That ain't true. That's what you just saw.
Prices are not down, they're up.
Inflation, it's getting worse.
The cost of groceries, gas, housing, even eggs is getting higher.
Let's bring in Peter Hamby. He's a partner at Puck News and the host of Snapchat's Good Luck America. Peter, it's great to see you.
Good to see you, Nancy.
So you just wrote an article for Puck about the efforts that Democrats are making to make some inroads in social media. Your article was called Revenge of the Nerds. They're fighting to change the narrative when it comes to Democrats on social media. So how are they faring?
I mean, I need to pick your brain on this, Nancy, but yeah, I mean, you're around a lot of these senators on Capitol Hill all the time. No one would ever think that Mazie Hirono and Sheldon Whitehouse and Mark Warner and Elizabeth Warren, no one would mistake them for social media savants. They're smart people, but their media strategies and the media strategies of a lot of Democrats, House, Gov, Senate, some presidential campaigns, is still, even now, very traditional. They think green room television first, New York Times first, small screen mobile phone second. And look, Democrats, especially in recent days, have done a lot of cringy things. And that was my first take when I saw this avalanche of TikTok videos. But then I saw Elon Musk and a bunch of MAGA people on Twitter, libs of TikTok, Mike Lee from Utah, retweeting all of these videos and compiling them and saying, ooh, there's some kind of conspiracy going on. Who wrote this scripted video? What it turns out is they were elevating an anti-Trump message about the economy, which was the substance of that scripted video. It was that prices are still up. Trump hasn't done anything to address prices so far. And, you know, in their own channels, these Senate Democrats were getting millions of views combined, Twitter, X, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. But then with Elon elevating them, they were getting many millions more views. And we're talking about them right here, Nancy. And so I think what was interesting to me about this was just that they understand attention is all that matters, even if people are making fun of them. And that's how Trump thinks about the media, too.
Yeah, I don't think I would have known about that video if Republican influencers hadn't started posting it. You talk about cringy videos, so I want to play another video that could be described as cringy that was released this week and ask you about the point behind it. Let's take a look. Okay, call me a boomer, but I had no idea what the cultural reference was there, which makes me assume that probably I was not the target demographic. Who is?
Theoretically, from watching that, it would be young people on TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. This is an example of something I don't think is very good. I will say, I've been talking to some Democrats in recent days about some of these strategies, tactics rather, and they're just happy that senators are at least trying. You see AOC right there. She's already good at social media. Lauren Underwood, pretty good at social media. I'm not sure Susie Lee and Judy Chu are, according to that video. That's a TikTok meme, a choose your fighter meme. It's like based on a video game. One problem with that meme on TikTok, that trend was popular like 2 or 3 years ago. So it's not even current. The difference is, I think, again, in that first sort of avalanche of videos, those were organized by Cory Booker. There was a strategy there from the Senate. There was a message embedded within it about prices in the economy. Maybe it's a boring message, but it's a message that it's something to talk about. Right. The second thing, there's no substance. It's substance free. And by the way, that's been a criticism of Kamala Harris and Democrats last year when they were talking about podcasts. Trump would go into podcast spaces and say something. He would make news. Maybe it was about policy. Maybe it wasn't. Democrats have to have something to say before they can go into these spaces and go viral. You can't just do a funny dance and expect it to work. So I don't think that was a great example of using social media, but they are trying.
That's such a good point. When you talk about podcasters, by the way, there was so much hand-wringing on the left about the fact that they didn't have someone who could compete with Republican-friendly podcasters like Joe Rogan or Theo Vaughn. Are they making any progress on that front?
That's always been my point too, Nancy. Bernie Sanders went on Joe Rogan. That's a good example. Andrew Yang went on Joe Rogan back in 2020 because they had ideas they wanted to talk about. So you need to go into those spaces armed with something. The best example of this we have this week is Gavin Newsom doing his own podcast and stepping in it, at least within his own party,
Yep.
on the issue of youth sports and whether trans girls should be able to play in youth sports. And Gavin Newsom broke with his own party on an issue that is popular with the American public, but unpopular within his party. So that's one thing the Democrats wanted. Some Democrats, at least, wanted some Democratic figures to do in the wake of the election. And then he did it on a forum, a podcast that also Democrats after the election were saying we need to do more podcasts. And so here's Gavin Newsom doing the two things some Democrats in Washington were requesting after Kamala Harris's loss: breaking with the left, embracing new media, and facing nothing but blowback for it. So I think this is going to be a really interesting tension point for Democrats moving forward. It's a really interesting first example of whether or not Democrats can navigate those two spaces.
Yeah, growing pains for sure. I've heard some people say that maybe comedian Bill Burr could probably fill that gap, but that remains to be seen. Peter Hamby, thanks so much for talking today. It's great to see you.
Good to see you, Nancy. Thanks.